Hello, hello. My name is Mayor Watt. I'm the mayor of ohmTown. That's that site right there, ohmtown.com. ohmtown.com is a news aggregator. It takes about, I don't know. I don't know how many news sources anymore. Aggregates them into 6 categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology, and funnels them into 50 subcategories. I use it in my daily life. So it's a site that I created, and I used it privately for a decade plus. And then I opened it up to the public here in January of 2022, and I started streaming on the same day. So we're up to episode number 120, and it's for April 30th, 2022. And we'll go over about 20 articles. I sometimes soapbox a little bit, but this gets turned into a podcast, into an archive over on YouTube. I'll be restreaming to both Twitch and YouTube, depending on how things play out here on Twitch. And but you can always get the podcast at Apple Podcasts, at Google Podcasts, Spotify, and others now. If you look around, if you've got something that's not one of those three, ohmTown will probably be there. If not already, then shortly, as I branch out into more platforms, because I got to practice what I preach, which is I tell people don't always put everything in one basket, because if that basket is taken from you, you got nothing. So it's easy advice for me to give in what I do, but to live it is a little more difficult. Plus, I'm a big fan of, I guess you could say, allegiance, loyalty. When I'm using a platform, I tend to be very loyal to that platform. But it's hard to if the platform isn't loyal to you, right? So I tell everybody just prepare, at least have preparations. But I don't know what's going to happen with Twitch. Depending on what the rumors say, you just gotta roll with it. And I really like Twitch, but I'm not being found here on Twitch, and I I don't know. So let's get into the news. Again, I've got about 20 articles. They're a pretty broad spectrum of things. The first article is here in the Word and Tech, and it is the latest Pixel Watch spec rumors show Google is trying to make a flagship. So this article is over at The Verge. It says in the little snippet that my aggregator gets, it sounds like Google's upcoming Pixel Watch will be a flagship set to compete with Samsung's latest Galaxy watches and the Apple Watch, according to new specs leaked by 9 to 5 Google. According to 9 to 5's report, you'll be able to get a cellular version of the wearable, and it will have a 300 milliamp hour battery. So let's click the link and take us over to The Verge. And the source of this article, they have their own source. Obviously, I just mentioned it. But the article for ohmTown was aggregated here. Hello, Dreadnought. And Mitchell Clark is the author of this article. The way I see it is, a lot of people kind of bring up this idea of like a competition. You know, that company sucks and this one is great. And largely there's some truth to both of those, right? The truth is in the middle somewhere. But what I want is competition. I want competition driving the tech and the benefit to the consumers. So when I went to business school, I was brought up on high finance. I was brought up on the idea of doing big business, international scope, and I I didn't like what was going down behind closed doors, and a lot of people kind of said good and bad things about my ideology. In that I really don't like things like mergers and acquisitions. I don't like uh, backroom deals. I don't like the idea, even the phrase of it's not what you know, it's who you know. And everybody claps and says, yay, networking is great and it's about social relationships. Now, I understand, yeah, that's how it is, but it doesn't have to be that way. I want my social, like, I want to be able to hang out with people here in chat, right? And that's my social aspect of things. I don't want to have a relationship with somebody business wise and have to tell them that they're fired. Whereas I can have a relationship with them, but it's framed in business. It's just not something that appeals to me. And so it's it's something that I need to separate. And so people say, well, pick a side, pick a side. No, 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 no. I don't want to pick a side. I want these watches and other tech to get smaller, bigger batteries, battery evolution, cellular and satellite technology, so that I am always being able to, I can be anywhere. If I want to hop onto my billionaire yacht, because I'm a billionaire, I'm not a billionaire. I really shouldn't have even said anything close to that, because that's how rumors get started and that's how you end up running for Congress or something. I don't know. Anyway, I want my watch to always be connected. And if somebody wants to contact me and they're part of my assortment of friends who have access to immediately contact me through my watch, boom, I want my watch functional. So I am not about picking a side here. Google, go and crush it. And then Apple will have to do better. And all the rest of them will have to do better. And that's my whole ideology about this. Um, do I have brand loyalty? Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Apple because it is so drop dead simple and secure. The only time that I've ever had any issues with a device is when it's been dropped. Windows, on the other hand, Linux, on the other hand, Android, on the other hand, I've always had kind of a nightmare relationship. Do I have them? Yes. I've got Android devices, I've got Linux devices, I've got a Raspberry Pi is somewhere on my network, I've got Internet of Things devices all over the place. I have no allegiance to a particular platform, but I'm very loyal to Apple because of how drop dead simple the entire ecosystem has been for me. I want to swap from one device to another. I can back up the device into the cloud, and with no operating system anywhere other than the one that allows me to connect to the cloud, which is the emergency restore function, I can pull down an image onto my device and boom, I'm operational again almost immediately. But that's not been the case for many other platforms. So I want those ecosystems to advance and make it seamless and simple. But with that simplicity comes constrained features. So we'll see what happens with these other devices. Well, everybody says, well, it's a walled garden here and a walled garden there. Yeah, everything actually is a walled garden. What we as consumers require is the ability to exfiltrate that data to some other walled garden. And then there is no walled garden. It's walled for protection, but it's not walled from our ability to hop over the wall. It needs to be a feature demanded by the consumers because the companies won't do it. Why would they want to promote the ability to hop away? Well, it's because it promotes the ability to hop to. But that might be logic that's lost in the MBA's spreadsheets. So Dreadnought, you said I disagree. The simpler the interface, the easier it is to be taken over. Downside of idiot-proof systems. Um, well, I don't know how to say it other than um, close to 35 years of experience have said otherwise. And I work in the security sector, so I, if you limit the ability to get into the meat and potatoes of a system, it stops most of any attack when you constrain access. That's why we have firewalls that limit any access. That's why we have host-based firewalls and other GPO and policy and physical policy and procedures in place to limit access. So the more constrained it is, the more predictable the possible intrusions are, and hence you don't get any access. That's why you can sideload stuff into Android, but it's really difficult to do that kind of stuff on an Apple iPhone. It's just a matter of how locked down it is. So you lose a ton of features when you are in the Apple ecosystem, but you gain them in many other platforms. So, correct. Yeah. But the more constrained it is, the less anybody has access to any feature set, any function, any form, even direct access. It's constrained. That's why there are like proprietary connectors on certain devices so that people can't easily get access. Now, you're always going to have somebody, you build a better mousetrap and you get smarter mice. That's just the nature of security. And so that's why cybersecurity is such a massive field out there. It's very lucrative to be in. It's constantly changing. You have to recertify again and again, depending on where you go. You have to push the limit further and further. It's a dynamic field. So, yeah. And so it isn't the security specialists. It isn't the people that are savvy that are the problem. We all know don't click on crap, but it's the average Joe that you have to watch out for, right? And the average Joe, of which I will count myself because I am not boots on the ground anymore. The idea of security to the average Joe is it's your fault, Dreadnought, that my computer was breached, not because I was technically savvy as a consumer. No, it's because you didn't lock down my computer when you sold it to me. And so now I'm mad at Dell, or I'm mad at Apple, or I'm mad at somebody else. Oh, it's their fault. And so it's one of the things that I talk about with people. Everybody has to be aware of their situation, and that means digitally as well, not just locking your front door. Yeah, so yeah, if you've been in tech and not just at the like consumer level, you've been behind the scenes and you've actually been consciously looking into it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are way more people that think that security is somebody else's problem than there are people that are actually engaged in protecting basically society against the malcontents that are breaching things with regularity. And you can't put that back in the bag. It is out there. It's like artificial intelligence. People are saying, well, we can control artificial intelligence if we just decide. No. That's not going to happen. There are countries out there that are working on weaponizing artificial intelligence. There are people out there that are just hell-bent on making something that can, power Umbrella Corporation. And the next thing you know, everything is being breached. There will always be people that are intent on pushing the limit. And it's really, what's the objective there? We're doing it to ourselves, essentially. So that's what I want, though. I want people pushing the limit. I just want it at the consumer level so that it isn't something that somebody can exploit simply because everybody else relies on it being secure right out of the gate. because companies don't really treat it as a first line of defense. They security is an afterthought, except for Apple, who is building the hardware right into it, and very high profile messaging that they want greater security. Only people within the government are going to change that dynamic, but we'll see what happens. But I'll have to let me keep going with some of the news, and we can talk about this. But what I really want is the companies pushing the limit in tech, making it smaller, making it more efficient, making revolutionary jumps in the tech instead of the drip, drip, drip that we've always gotten because some business manager in Intel said we're going to double the number of transistors every 2 years. To me, that was nothing more than a business model, not a physical limit based on science. It was a self-imposed business model that, new tech can come out, can evolve every 2 years. Apple has changed that dynamic greatly with the M1 and M series moving forward. And then there's revolutionary changes that are taking place in electrical engineering, where people are getting greater understanding of electronics itself, electricity itself. But that's fundamental research. That's very well-educated people, and that's 10 to 20 years down the line from when it becomes reality. So let me continue. The next article is over in The Word in Tech, and it is the price of free speech. The price of free speech: why Elon Musk's $44 billion vision for Twitter could fall apart. And there is some discussion about this actually falling apart. I don't really see it happening. And bioelectronics soon, Dreadnought. Yep. And Elon's one of them that's part of this whole evolution into bioelectronics. I'm not a big fan of internal to external wired connectivity because tech evolves so fast that there are many people who have had been early adopters to biotech, and ultimately the grant ends or the monitoring period ends, and they're left with old tech that will slowly fall apart and no long-term solution for them should they live long enough to require something. And it's very expensive to monitor and painful for everybody involved, particularly the patient. So I'm really leery about the hard-coded, the implant kind of thing. Pacemakers have been tried and tested. They've gone from things that are, bigger than a VW Bug. Not really. I mean, the biggest has been probably the biggest pacemaker was somewhere around 3 feet by 3 feet in size on a rolling cart, basically. But now we've got it wireless. We can charge it wirelessly. We can interact with it wirelessly, and but it can also be hacked. So now security is being embedded in implantable electronics. But this Twitter thing here is basically this lean into free speech, which free speech has nothing to do with private industry. I keep talking about this, and I'm not quite sure why the public feels that free speech is something that is levied against companies. That's not the nature of free speech. Free speech, as I have said in other episodes, is levied against government to prevent government from reacting to something that somebody says about government. The problem here is now that you've got people within the government And when I'm talking about the government, I'm talking about the establishment of the government. So the establishment of the government applies to everybody that is qualified as being part of the government, senators, etc. The police, anybody who is part of the enterprise concept of government. So it can be state, local, federal, um, multinational, etc. Right? Like just because you say something bad about NATO, they can't come in and eliminate you in the United States because they're bound by U.S. law. Um, well, when they're operating in the U.S. Anyway, my point is, you can say whatever you want on Twitter, and it's up to Twitter to decide what messages they want exiting. Just like you can't go into Target, or if whatever name, find Aldi if you're in the UK, or somewhere else. I don't know if they have Targets in Europe, but anyway, you go into your big box store and start saying all kinds of wackadoo stuff, and you're going to be asked to leave. And when you don't, then they can call the police. Why? Because it's private property with public access. You can't just do whatever you want. Why this doesn't apply to Twitter and any other organization where you are invited in, but should you be a bad actor, you're asked to leave. So Dreadnought says American laws get confusing between state and federal, and no target in UK. Okay. Yeah, I've never looked into it, so it's one that flew under my radar. But they have similar big box stores, and I'm sure every country has the relative size of big box stores for their country and demand, but you pick it. You can't just say whatever you want in any of these things, because they're private venues that are open to the public with the right to refuse service to anybody unless it's a protected class. So, you can't say to a person of color, well, you're black, so you're not allowed. Oh, are you? Hey, cool. Um, the idea of saying something like that to a person who is not a sociopath is absurd. Ask somebody to leave because they're saying obnoxious things and acting a fool. That is my right as a store owner, just as much as if somebody walked into your house that you invited into your house and they started getting drunk and acting belligerent. Yeah, I'm going to ask you to leave. If everybody treated every business as if it was visiting a friend, that would be probably the most apropos way to interact with a business. Unfortunately, in this particular case, there's an activist investor, Elon Musk, who is saying that my $44 billion is an appeal to free speech, but it's not. It's an appeal to chaos. It's an appeal to allowing anybody to say anything regardless of its impact. And sometimes that impact is factually incorrect. So you just can't say whatever you want. Now, he may change that dynamic. He's the owner of Twitter. Should it actually everything go through, just because he made the purchase doesn't necessarily mean that it will all follow through. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Most stores have that policy. I can refuse service to anyone. And here in the States, it actually is. You have the right to refuse service to anybody unless it's part of unless it's part of a protected class. And there's various protected classes. You can't say you're not allowed in here because you're old. Now, if you read the room and everybody that's in the store is looking at you like, oh, you're one of the olds, get out of here. Your safety might be in peril. And so it would be smart to leave, but you might want to have somebody investigate this because it is a violation of rights in the United States. So there's various protected classes. And it isn't as straightforward as that once the boots hit the ground kind of a thing. Well, in this particular case, should this all go through, Elon Musk has even hinted at returning accounts to people that have been banned, including one that actually, the last thing that I read today was that somebody said that it was a Twitter account that was used to try and, I use the word delete, but it's really kill a person, um, a senator. They were trying to gather enough money to put a hit out on a senator. And that person got a message from somebody that said, hey, Elon said to me that you might get your account back. And that just blew my mind. I thought that was really rather absurd. And so I don't know the, I don't know if that is actually all truthful from end to end. But Elon has already stated that he's kind of bummed that Trump doesn't have his account back yet. But who knows? He's going to leverage his, oligarch level power to change policy in Twitter. And people are vacating the platform. Anybody who might have said anything that might offend, because he has used that platform to fire off screeds at people, telling politicians, oh, I didn't know you're still alive and stuff like that. I mean, when you are untouchable, you can say and do whatever you want, until you're no longer untouchable. So this is where we end up. So let me go over to the source. I'm soapboxing a lot today. It's the weekend, so I have a lot more time on my hands, and I can just sit here and chat. Well, at any rate, the price of free speech is $44 billion apparently, and Elon Musk actually leveraged a bit of Tesla and other investors' money to buy Twitter, and in the process tanked Tesla stock. So this is an article over at The Guardian written by Dan Milmo and Joanna Buien, I guess it is. I might be pronouncing it incorrectly. So if anybody knows Joanna, have them contact me and let me know how to pronounce that name. So this article here goes talking about the takeover of Twitter. This actually happened with Tesla as well. He was an angel investor in Tesla, and then he actually bought more and became a controller of Tesla and ousted the two that were co-CEO. Twitter became the better for it, but that's when if you have the money, then you have the influence to make the change that you so desire. So who knows what Tesla would have been, but we know what it is. You can't prove the negative, you can't prove what could have. You can only deal with what is. And it says here, yet hours after the self-described free speech absolutist was engaging with tweets criticizing senior Twitter staff, including an interaction with a political podcast host who had labeled the company's legal head as a top censorship advocate. So what I have heard about this interaction was this person ended up on a horrible vitriolic attack, all from the interaction that involved Elon Musk. Now, us guys only have to worry about violence, like somebody coming and beating us up or something like that, right? That isn't a concern for many, 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 many people. But women have to deal with phrases like, I'm going to come after you and rape you, or I'm going to come after you and remove you from the planet. Not just kill, but it's like disappear you. These people, these sociopaths, these antisocial I can't even describe it. I mean, it's just not within my uh, worldview to say these kind of things, right? But they're talking about a woman who is doing her job for a company and not just letting everything happen. That is her job, particularly if she's in the legal field. She's supposed to protect the enterprise from legal attacks, which come in droves in a major enterprise like Twitter. So, yeah, well, hey, Dreadnought. Trained in ex-military? Not everybody is, man. And there's very few places. Well, there's actually quite a bit of places, but in the grand scheme of things, there are a few places that are compelling citizens to go through military training. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But it being compulsory is like the antithesis of the United States. But who knows in the coming years what's going to happen? Things seem to be going kind of wonky. So yeah, I mean, I get it. Maybe I can have you hanging out with me a lot. No, I can take care of myself. Anyway, yep, and I agree with that. Self-defense training is, hell, just teaching situational awareness is pretty much a fundamental aspect of being safe. And it's just like ethics. It's an afterthought. And best left to the last chapter of a book about anything, whatever it might be. You know, it's like 4 pages of a manual on everything else, and then they throw that in. But situational awareness alone would be an amazing trait to develop with everybody. So this woman, basically, she's going to have to either hire people to be security, or she's going to have to install more surveillance, and she's going to always have that stressor of people possibly out of the woodwork attacking her simply because she's doing her job. And this is kind of what I was talking about, where I say that there are people behind all of these mechanisms, right? Well, in this particular case, the target of this is the wrong target. This person is doing their job and making the enterprise better because they're not allowing vitriol and hate speech, and they're following the law. This is something that no matter what happens, this woman is on the losing side of it, because there's a bunch of batshit crazy people that are going to come after her. And it's a shame. It is an absolute shame. But that is what's going to kill Twitter. And we're already witnessing it, because there reasonable people are leaving Twitter. Yep. Yeah. And I agree. I mean, unfortunately, not everybody has the ability to do that. So let me continue on with the rest of the articles. The next article is Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, which I've spoken of previously. Their Class A shares are fabulously priced. You could buy a house with one, a very nice house with one, and depending on where you buy the house, an extremely nice house with one share of Berkshire Hathaway stock. Anyway, they plowed a net $41 billion into stocks last quarter and slowed its share repurchases. And by the way, there was talk about Tesla. I mentioned it earlier. The Tesla stocks declined. People were like, oh my God, Tesla stock declined. I hate to break it to you, but at one point, Elon Musk wanted to pull Tesla private. So a decline in the stock price just allows him to acquire it. So he'll be able to purchase more stock, control more of the company, and ultimately take it private. And this is exactly what is going to lead to American oligarchs. Private companies, private everything, controlled by a very select few. And to me, well, we know other places that are exactly like that. So it's going to be a real shame when we end up like that. Let's hope that more responsible and reasonable heads prevail. because the only people that want something like that are people that think that they are going to benefit from it, or they're already benefiting from it because they have great wealth, and so acquiring more is just as simple as buying it. And as long as it's a forward-moving enterprise, then it's going to recover that wealth that they lost when they purchased it. And even then, if I purchase something for $44 billion and it's worth $44 billion, I can actually loan money against that asset. That's a leveraged purchase. So if I can use something that is perceived at, $50 billion, I can get a loan for $50 billion at a 0.5% interest rate, and never be impacted by it, because the money that I'm investing across the stock market and elsewhere is garnering 12%. So what does it matter to me? Not everybody can do that. You can't do it. I can't do it. Most people on the planet can't do it. So, yeah, and he inherited an emerald mine and great wealth to begin with. So, at any rate, this is Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway boosted stock purchases but slowed buybacks last quarter. The Investors Company reported a 28% decline in its cash pile due to increased spending. So, mark my words, I've said this before, it's a decline in its cash pile, not in its assets. All it's done is invest it somewhere, and now it's striking it off as a loss because its cash flow has changed. But it's going to profit because of where it invested. Do you know where it all invested? Well, you'd have to go and look at all of its SEC filings. The famed investor, his company, spent about $3.2 billion on buybacks in the period, compared to upwards of $6 billion in each of the previous 5 quarters, marking its lowest outlay since the first quarter of 2020. So keep that in mind. Yeah, exactly. Dreadnought said cash is nothing to these people. Correct. To me, it seems absurd that anybody would need $1 billion, let alone $230 billion. And then the companies themselves are valued at hundreds of billions of dollars, upwards of $1 trillion. It's just wildly outlandish, but people are profiting off of the stock going up, and so they're happy when it's profitable, but they raise hell when it goes sour, and that's what we're feeling right now, the stock market imploding. And again, I've done my research, and I have peeled back layer after layer of where the interest rates are increasing and why they're increasing, why costs are increasing, why the consumer price index is jumping massively. And it all comes back to oil company profiteering. From that is a foundational indicator of the economics of everything else, because you cannot do anything without fuel, without power, without oil, gas. So let's click this link. It'll take us over to Business Insider, and this article is written by I think it's Theron. It's not Taran Mohammed. Let's see if there's anything else in here. It says the increase in spending last quarter fueled the decline in Berkshire's cash pile from $147 billion to $106 billion, a 28% fall. So we're talking billions, okay? Like 10% of Elon Musk's wealth, total wealth, 10% was spent, actually, sorry about that, not 10%, 20% was spent in investing somewhere from the cash pile of Berkshire's, little, it's like Smaug sitting with all of the gold and whatnot, they just spent $40 billion. It's just a massive amount of cash and completely outside the sphere of reality for most people. And so Dreadnought, you said we need a better fuel source. What would that fuel source be? What do you think it could be? 25 years ago, maybe longer than that. Now I'm getting old. I had a friend that changed his entire direction of life and focused on city planning and did fundamental research on peak oil, and spun up a company on environmental controls, LEED certification, etc., and is a specialist subject matter expert in that domain. 30 years later, we're still selling, trading, whatever, oil at marginally the same price. Only when somebody wants to pry more money does it go up. And somehow it fluctuates $50 on a whim. So hydrogen 3, if you can mine it from the moon, it would be wildly expensive to try and extract that. But yeah, I get it. And there's other things that are kind of like it, but these are finite resources. Trying to get it from the moon would be almost an impossibility for the economy. Maybe as a global economy, yeah, we'd all be able to pool our resources, look past our our self-made walls and make it over to the moon, start up a processing plant and bring all of that fuel back. Somehow I just don't see all of us getting on the same page. Hell, everything would have been fine with Ukraine being autonomous, and look what is going on now. All because one person decided that they needed to do that. So, yeah. What we need is alien invasion, and it publicly disclosed, right? Because we all know that aliens are everywhere. We just don't see them. Men in Black was actually a documentary, and if you look closely enough, you can see people driving other people around with that little green guy in the head of the. Anyway, maybe I've said too much. I'll just move on. Anyway. So Berkshire boosted its buying this year, and it plowed $7 billion into Occidental Petroleum. Oh, surprise. In 11 days, snapped up $4 billion of HP shares and struck a deal to acquire Allegheny for 11.6 in under 2 weeks. So if you want to see where things are being influenced, there you go. $7 billion into Occidental Petroleum. Go look up Occidental Petroleum. You might be surprised. The next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel. This $30,000 a night Las Vegas villa has hosted celebrities from Barack Obama to Lizzo. Take a look inside. Let's do that. This article is by Megan Sauer. And see, I don't have an ad blocker on my. I say this every time it happens. Maybe I'm just going to have to open up an account and log in. I have accounts on other news sites, but not on CNBC. It's a relatively new one that I've added. I've used it personally, but I've never, not until recently did I start aggregating it. But people pay it. Dreadnought, people pay $30,000 a night. And there was, where was it? I had this just random conversation with somebody the other day, and they said something about $120,000 or something like that. So close to $75,000 a night is what it was. And it was just absurd to me, but look at this. So let's scroll down a little bit, and this is what you're paying for $30,000 a night. The Titus Villa. 33.5 foot long outdoor pool is covered by a retractable roof and accompanied by a nearby dining area. Oh, and if you're watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard lawsuit or trial for defamation, he has his own island, so staff has to pack up and go over there. So when you're like this wildly rich, you have people around you all the time. And some people totally get charged up by that kind of stuff. Maybe that's one of the issues that I have is that I like my me time, and when you have to have security around you all the time, and you have friends that are popping by out of the woodwork, and it's really only because you're either a movie star or a billionaire, and you have to kind of isolate yourself from the rest of society, just to get away. Like, it's a greater barrier to have all of that wealth to separate yourself from the rest of people so that you can have your own me time. Even behind the walls and whatnot, you have people like emailing you and texting you and calling you, and you've got people surrounding you. It's just, I, I guess I just like my me time. And it's just so outside my sphere of reality for something like this to be justifiable. $30,000 a night. We want you to feel like you're at home, McBurney says, adding that between all 65 butlers, the staff speak several different languages. That's great. That means you can have whatever your authentic food is. We have a large culinary team that can create whatever it is that you desire. How about not $30,000 a night? But it's just outrageous. But they cater to people that a lot of people think that they'll ever be able to hang out with. And it's just not true. They aspire to be this, and that's why they don't buck the system. They don't say that this is outrageous. How is this even, a possibility? But I've had these conversations with others that have said, well, who are you to say that this shouldn't exist? Well, I'm not saying that it shouldn't exist. I'm saying it doesn't exist in my reality. But why should it exist? It's only for a select few. But what's interesting about this is that it is for a great number of people, certainly enough that pay for it to make it a business. But in the grand scheme of things, it is a select few. It's a microcosm of maybe 10,000 people out of the entire planet that are ever going to pay $30,000 a night. And possibly more than, it's probably businesses that are doing this, that are making that expense, as well as some very rich individuals. But $30,000 a night. Okay, so let me continue on. I am barely halfway through my news, so this is Instacart's pandemic boom is fading. Yeah, this is almost an obvious return to the old normal as we open up our doors and we deal with a relatively low level of infections that are even because Omicron is now the dominant species of the COVID virus. It doesn't have as many kind of destructive levels of activity in the human body. So it still causes damage. It still causes potentially long-term damage, but it's just more infectious. It's not necessarily more destructive. So we're dealing with the outbreaks, but now all of the rules, regulations, policies, procedures that have been in place are falling away. And so Instacart is no longer in great demand. Many people, including myself, will still use delivery services just because now I'm at home more often and I work from home all the time. I do everything from home, and I can go to meetings around the world instantly via Zoom, and I don't have to go to some conference room and blah, blah, blah. So all of that infrastructure is in place now. So teleworking is where it's at for many white collar, I should say, specifically white collar jobs. So it's no surprise that many delivery services are going to see a decline. It says when exactly will that happen becomes murkier. Last month, when in a rare move, Instacart said it was slashing its valuation by 40% to $24 billion, citing the market turbulence that has roiled the technology companies. In addition, top executives have left, including 2 presidents, one of whom resigned after just 3 months. Yeah, I can tell you why that happened. They were sold a bill of goods when they were approached for the job. I don't know this verbatim, exactly. I've seen it happen because I've seen it happen. Literally, this is how it transpires. You get told something and you get handed some information. That information is sound and solid, and it allows you to make a decision based on what you have been given when you requested it. And then when you get in there, you go, okay, what about this? What about this? What about that? You peel back the layers of the onion and you find out that this is a hot mess, a dumpster fire on inside a bus that's crashing into a Sunday school. You don't want any part of it, so you hot-footed out of there. And that's why somebody would disappear. They would just leave. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And I've seen it both directly and I've seen it by proxy with people that I've worked with. So I would be leery of any delivery service right now that saw. If you go back 2 years before the pandemic and you didn't see this trend of growth, it is a pandemic boom. You might as well bow out, cut your losses, and move on. So let's go on to the next article. This is in the Daily News Show channel. That is what this is. And it's taking 9 years to replace underground jet fuel tanks in Washington State. Red Hill can't wait that long. So if you don't know about Red Hill is in Hawaii. They have leaking fuel tanks. It's contaminating not just the specific area water, but all of the water in Hawaii, and damaging the ecosystem. And it's really because everything that is man-made degrades over time. And we have a direct comparison. This is an article from commondreams.org, and I always qualify this as a lot of their titles, even the verbiage in the articles, are inflammatory. It's literally geared to rile you up, depending on your state of mind when you're reading it. So I encourage people to go and read these articles. Even if you don't agree with it in whole, there are parts that will make you understand the context of this to a greater degree. But fuel leaks contaminate the water for an unknown amount of time, because the parts per million have to be reduced. There has to be enough flow and filter it out. Well, this was making people sick. Hundreds of people were being made sick, or worse, very, very sick, I guess I could say. But they need to get all of this fuel out, put it in temporary storage, and relocate it, so that they can wipe all of this out and rebuild it right with modern equipment, modern gear. And in comparison to the Washington State issue, it's going to take 10 years. But if I recall correctly, this is a bigger enterprise. And so it says it took the DoD 3 years to begin work on shutting down the tanks after the decision was made. The decision to close and remove the original 33 underground fuel tanks and construct 6 new above ground tanks was made in 2018, but it did not begin to close down the facility until 2021. So this thing is just a real cluster. And like Dreadnought says, jet fuel is super flammable. Yep. And it's just dangerous to work around when you have something that is in the process of failing, because people don't want to be around it. They take greater risk. If anything sparks this thing up, it's going to just go out of control. Its only saving grace is that it's in ground, so it can be somewhat controlled. But this is a hot mess, and a super fun site if I've ever seen one. Considering the nature of Hawaii, it is almost a closed ecosystem except for us intruding into it. So, um, yeah. If it combusts in a way, if it just burns, that's one thing. But if it is explosive and detonates, this thing will act like a subterranean explosion, and be catastrophic for the region. So they need to move faster and move smart, and treat it as a FEMA, uh, a federal emergency management site, and activate the resources necessary to dispose, replace, relocate the fuel, um, and build a more suitable facility to store it. Above ground is just as, to me, is even more dangerous because it's harder to defend its stability, and some wackadoo could just roll up in a Jeep and do something horrible to it. But I think about everything, and when I think about situations, I think about it holistically. And so when people talk about um, things like, well, we can just switch to solar. Well, hate to break it to you, but if we're all on solar and something happens, all it takes is a BB gun and you can destroy a solar array. One shot to one panel reduces it dramatically. And the same thing with wind. All it takes is an imbalance for the wind generator to fail, or um, and I think about things in the military context as well, because although we haven't had domestic conflict, it can happen. And if you put all of your eggs in the basket of wind or solar or geothermal, um, or even hydro, hydro is somewhat defensible. You have to just build a perimeter wider to protect it. But you're not going to stop something like a missile. But all it takes to destroy geothermal, to destroy hydro, to destroy, is some external force. Um, and solar is the most susceptible to pretty much anything. You throw a rock and you can destroy a solar panel. Um, I know people that have solar panels where somebody has shot a BB gun at their solar panels, and it cost them tens of thousands of dollars to replace it because the panel has been destroyed by a BB gun, for crying out loud, and they lose power. So if you're off grid and something happens to your solar panels, ta-da. So, Dreadnought, you brought it up much earlier in this stream. What do? We need a better energy source. The only thing that I can think of that is defensible and continuous, but it's very, very, it's high tech, but mundane at the same time. So it's high tech. Nuclear power is high tech. And it's something that we are doing fundamental research on. We need more fundamental research on to deal with the results of our nuclear fissile material. But it's still nothing more than a steam engine. And that is the one thing that bothers me the most about nuclear power, because we can figure out ways to deal with the waste, the byproduct, and things like tokamak generators are one of the things that have the ability to not have waste products. But man, the fact that it's nothing more than a steam engine just drives me nuts. I want it to be something a little bit more Star Trek-y, where it's a more one-to-one ratio exchange from what it is to what it's going to get translated into. But it being nothing more than a steam engine means that there's so much stuff that can go wrong, and then you end up with Chernobyl blowing its top. So a fuel storage facility is just an indicator of just how old school we are. We're still kind of backwoods compared to our vision of where we want to be, that we have to use some liquid fuel that slowly decomposes the very container that it's sitting in, and then contaminates the world around it. It's just so, it's not very portable, but it is in our particular mindset. Um, yeah, it's it's just wild. Yeah, and a lot of people just don't realize what it is that a nuclear reactor is. And you basically, you take a train, you stick it underground, um, you put a bunch of nuclear material inside the coal compartment, and that's what turns the wheels because it's boiling water. It's not really boiling water, but it's it's boiling a liquid super hot to turn a turbine. So futuristic and still mundane, Wild West. Um, okay, so let's continue on. I swear this stream is going to turn into 4 hours. So the next article is in Hatch Ideas channel. Meet a metaverse megalord, mega landlord, and that spent millions on real estate in 10 virtual worlds, hosting fashion shows and designing stores. So the Metaverse Group owns large swaths of virtual land in various metaverses, because there is more than the metaverse, Facebook crossover thing. There's a bunch of different metaverses, by the way. And we don't, it's kind of like the VHS versus Betamax. We don't know which one is going to dominate, but I can almost guarantee you it's which one throws the most money at it. Because again, just like security, I believe that everybody thinks that it's somebody else's issue. And depending on your mindset in business, too many options means confusion to the consumer. And so you're going to have either Facebook or everybody else. And I don't like Facebook because of their history with privacy and ethics. I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, it says it's not just a landlord. It has developers who can build spaces to any advertiser's heart's desire. Wow, that's a hard sentence to say. It's designed virtual stores for Forever 21 and through the first Metaverse Fashion Week. So we're going to click this link, and I'm going to have to hustle to get through the rest of these. I got like 10 more articles, man. This is an article over at Business Insider, and it's written by Katie Canales. And I can't get into the metaverse, even though I'm into VR and AR. I have done fundamental research in VR in the sector of wow, my frames just dropped again. I've done fundamental research in the areas of psychology and phobia treatment, and yeah, one person, I blame you, Dreadnought, for making me actually very happy. I love this. I actually love talking about this. I need to get more people, but I'm just not. I don't go into. I've said this in so many other streams now, that of my streams and other people's streams. I don't hype my show. It's only 1 hour, so people don't see me long term. But I see the podcast ramping up, so I guess I'm doing something in terms of getting seen by some people. I haven't gone viral or anything, other than maybe a cold that I have. But no, it's awesome that you're here. I really appreciate it. And so this, so I'm very familiar with AR. I'm very familiar with VR. I'm an early adopter for most things, but the way that this is going, the way that meta is going, the way that metaverse is going, is it's all of this. It's kind of this low res, cartoony kind of interface, which is fine, I guess, because it's this neophyte framework. It's just a basic beginning. But I want something more. I want to see something bigger. This is the same kind of stuff that I have seen, although this is massive in its scale where people can get to it. This is the type of graphics that I was using when I was doing phobia treatment 30 years ago. The the way that I did things was um, essentially you could just call it biofeedback. Um, and you could treat yourself for your own phobia. If you're afraid of flame, we could generate a flame in front of you that's really small. And as your um, the various sensors on your body, from heart rate, breathing, eye dilation, galvanic skin response, as you interacted with the world around you, it would scale up or down in real time. If you're afraid of spiders, you plop a spider on the table. But this is the level of graphics that was deployed 30 years ago. So why is this such low end now? It needs to be more approachable. But this is the lower budget but very expensive deployment of what really is needed for people to want to be in it. But now is the land rush where people are selling virtual real estate and offering early adopter services so that you can market and message. Because if you get in early enough, then you're the one that's the trailblazer and everybody wants to buy into you. Yeah, right up until something better comes along, and then you're left in the dust because you never really pushed the limit. All you did was use what was available to you. If I had $44 billion, I wouldn't be buying Twitter. I would be pushing something like this with the right hardware, and letting people have privacy and greater capabilities and be platform agnostic, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's so many things that I would love to do in VR and AR space, but right now it's all being driven by Meta and a few others. I'd say that Disney is probably going to be a dominating force in AR and VR at some point, along with Apple leaning into the ability to get to that space. But we shall see in the next couple of years, I'd say. It's not necessarily who does it first, it's who does it best. So let's see what happens. It says one of the industry's major players is the Metaverse Group, which has quietly made itself the chief landlord on the virtual block. Andrew Akiguel, I guess his name is, the CEO of the company's parent organization, Tokens.com, told Insider it's poured 8 figures, or more than $10 million worth of digital real estate purchases. So what do you think? You want to buy some land? I was in another streamer's Grumble, GUR. Let me see. Maybe I can link straight to them. Oh, let me do it that way. Right? Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Yeah, I'll just link it like that. So I was in his channel and he said that if I donated $10, he'd give me a bridge. I'm thinking that maybe a VR bridge would actually be pretty neat. I could sit under it and demand payment for people that cross from one region to another. I could be a bridge troll. In the metaverse, that might be lucrative if I'm an early adopter and I get the right bridge. It's given me ideas. Anyway, a hybrid landlord and real estate developer. The metaverse, in theory, will be a sweeping digital world where people can interact via digital avatars while tethered to their living rooms via AR glasses and VR headsets. But right now, these are just nascent. Individual spaces with little connection between each other. Haha, see there, I'm the bridge. Okay, anyway. Yeah, this is a long way out. I'm glad that there are early adopters, but I think that it is, it's too abstract right now. And I think that it needs to be higher resolution and more realistic for people to buy into it. It's kind of sitting in its own VR uncanny valley. And while some people really appreciate it, I think that the greater number of the population would rather have something that's more realistic to interact with. And we definitely need things like force feedback and whatnot. So let me continue on the next article. Bored Ape Yacht Club creator Yuga Labs, let me click that link there, is about to sell $300 million in metaverse real estate, potentially marking the largest NFT launch to date. And my perspective on NFTs, this article is in the Hatch Ideas channel on ohmTown, but it was aggregated from Business Insider. So I'm just going to jump over there real quick so that you can see the source. Business Insider, Brian Evans is the author. And so it says here, they plan to sell digital non-fungible tokens, NFTs, deeds to virtual real estate in its new game Otherside. Each deed costs 305 ape coins, or about 6,000 US dollars. The NFTs give buyers access to a supply of up to 5,500 plots of metaverse landscape. So those of us who are interested in this kind of thing find a lot of issues with NFTs in general because like I have been talking about NFTs, I think NFTs would be great in terms of reinstilling the idea of first sale doctrine here in the United States. It doesn't apply everywhere, but I'm pretty sure within the legal framework of most countries, if you purchase something, you own it. Okay, so let me see. I've got my remote. I paid money for this remote. I can sell it. Bink, right? Well, it's a physical product. Just like art is a physical product. If I purchase a piece of framed art, I own it, I can sell it. That's first sale doctrine. That does not apply to digital art. Copyright law, trademark law, rights in general don't apply to this digital framework. So there is no first sale doctrine. And the contract from one person to another, if you purchase Bored Ape Yacht Club pictures, you are essentially given the artwork, but you don't have the unadulterated copyright. You don't own the material. You own a license for that material, for whatever the work is. That's the exact same thing that's going to persist in digital real estate environments. You're going to purchase something that is a license for that particular plot of digital land, but it's not going to apply to the real world. It is a matter of understanding the law that applies here. Because the land is created by a bot, not a human being, it doesn't hold a copyright, because a human being is the only one that has the right to a copyright. Okay? So computer generated works are not copyrightable. They are in its embodiment, but the person that owns it is the one that created it. So all of those pictures from the Bored Ape Yacht Club are owned by Bored Ape, the creators of Bored Ape, Yuga Labs, and they give you a license. So if you try and sell it to somebody else, the contract, it's a smart contract. It's been implied that it goes to that other person, but legally it doesn't go to that other person because the contract is created between you and Yuga Labs. It gets more complex into the reeds of law, but anything that's computer generated can't even be copyrighted. Because it was computer generated. It isn't created by a human being. So artwork, when I paint it, artwork when I create a digital piece, that's created by me. But an autonomous process of creating 10,000 bored apes, which are nothing more than a composite of a few pieces of work, that's not even, apparently, based on legal frameworks, say it can't be copyrighted. So we have problems with any of this ownership of digital works, not to mention the fact that you have to enforce that right. And all I have to do is take a screenshot of Bored Ape artwork and I can put it anywhere. And you would have to come after me to enforce it. Whereas if I own something, that NFT, let's say, if that NFT had the proper foundation, the proper legal foundation and framework, I would be able to take that piece of work, whatever it is, that has an NFT attached to it, and I could sell it to somebody else as part of first sale doctrine. That does not exist in legal frameworks right now. If I buy an ebook, it's just a license. If I buy a piece of artwork online, it's just a license. The original creator of the book, the original creator of the artwork, they are the one that retain the copyright in perpetuity. Although they can assign it to somebody else, they can license it to anybody they want to, they still retain the copyright. So they could change the terms at a moment's notice. They could actually retract the license. They could retract the copyright and say nobody can have it. And it's all part of the current framework of copyright law, IP law in general. So we have yet to see a challenge to anything that's ongoing with this. And what you'll find out when you do some research about this on your own is that anything that is not created directly by a human being isn't copyrightable. And if you look at the picture of the macaque that took its own picture with a photographer's camera, it's in the public domain because nobody can own that, because it wasn't the photographer that took the picture, it was the macaque, and a macaque can't have copyright applied to it. It can't own a copyright. So that might bear down on this stuff in the future, but right now it's kind of Wild West days and people are really buying into it. So there's a lot of money. And if you want to go and buy some land from Bored Ape Yacht Club in the metaverse, then get $6,000 at minimum ready, because that's how much it'll cost. Let's go on to the next article. Governments tighten grip on global food stocks, sending prices higher, as if we need any more higher prices. Dozens of countries have thrown up trade barriers in the past 2 months to protect scarce supplies of food and commodities, but experts say the policies will only exacerbate a global food crisis. Yes and no. It'll protect it domestically within any country that is throwing up the barrier. But let me do this first. This is from the New York Times, and it's written by Anna Swanson. So the experts that are saying that it'll just cause a greater crisis are hinting at the fact that there are countries that are really good at producing certain things. And so it's easier for them to create a mass amount of product and then sell it, right? So if, let's say, like Ukraine is really well known for sunflower seeds, they're really good at producing it. The land is great for it. So they make a ton of money selling this product. And it's a strategic crop for Ukraine. So they sell it, they make money, they use that money to buy other stuff from other countries. That where they are weak in producing it domestically, they buy it from foreign countries, and that's the import-export process, right? Well, if more countries developed processes domestically to offset that, then they wouldn't be impacted as much. But what we've done in business is we've leaned into our strategic objectives. What are we really good at? Let's focus on that, instead of trying to find ways to augment what we are weak at so that we don't have to rely on somebody else to provide the means to get something to us. That even applies to something as simple in concept as Twitch, right? So there's these ongoing conversations about some policy and procedure changes at Twitch, and that percentages of profits are changing, and what you can do on Twitch is going to change, etc. All of this kind of stuff, right? So if you feel that you're going to be harmed by this, you had better start planning now to stream over to some other platform as well as to Twitch. And that's by bolstering what you are good at, which is on Twitch, and then expanding your like a SWOT assessment, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunity. So what you want to do is kind of maximize what you're good at, and then spend that money on bolstering what you're weak at, and then basically alleviate yourself from a problem like this. And it's something that I've been talking about for periodically since I started streaming here on the stream, but I talk about this regularly every year because of what I do when I'm not streaming. And it's just something that every country needs to kind of bear down on, because it says, like, right here in this very first paragraph, which I rarely read the very first paragraph, Ukraine has limited exports of sunflower oil, wheat, oats, and cattle in an attempt to protect its war-torn economy. Russia has banned sales of fertilizer, sugar, and grains to other nations. So whatever they were weak at, they're going to have to change the dynamic, because all it takes is somebody to make a policy change, and everybody is just kind of, for lack of a more professional term, screwed. So let's continue on. The next article is in the Word in Tech, and it says, this chart might explain why CNN Plus shut down early. Now that CNN has made the decision to shut down its streaming baby, CNN Plus, less than a month after it went live, you might be wondering what went wrong. Yesterday or the day before, there was a much longer form article about it. I'm not linking to it in here, but this article is over at The Verge, and it's from Jasmine Hicks, and they have this little graph down here. I've seen this in a different context, and so essentially it would have taken 10 years for this thing to even become a moderate success in terms of streaming platforms. And it kind of highlights a particular perception of how this all plays out. In 2021, zero revenue, and their operating costs were negative $100 million. That's to get it built up, to start marketing, to start driving the messages. And then in 2022, a negative $400 million on revenue of $100 million. So their runway was getting short really quick. And so in 2022, just seeing the future being almost 10 years before they reach profitability, it's actually 5 years before they see their revenue generating enough to make it, well, it would be 3 years to be break even, and then 2 years to make, and then another year after that, to make $200 million off of $1 billion in revenue. I mean, that's some pretty heavy lifting for an organization this size. But like I said, with this, there was no value add. There was nothing being driven into CNN Plus. So what was the point? Because I can get my news from everywhere else. There were no personalities that were really driving me to go to CNN Plus. If you were an early adopter, it would still cost you $3 a month, but it was going to be $6 a month unless you paid for the full year. The whole idea of this was kind of like a money grab, but it was an unfounded money grab because nobody would go to CNN Plus. It just wasn't worth the risk. But it drove hundreds of millions of dollars and untold HR man hours. Again, for lack of a better term, I don't know what they refer to people hours now as in denoting how many hours a group of people put together. I don't think that man hours is now really appropriate. But anyway, let's continue on. I'll be here until 10 p.m. at this rate. And the next article is in the Wanted channel, and it says review. The Oura Ring 3 and the Whoop 4.0 are two ambitious wearables, but they are tough sells. I've spoken about the Oura Ring before. I'm just going to go over to the site really quick and talk about it in real time here. This is an Ars Technica article by Corey Gaskin. And the Oura Ring, which is that little black ring right there, is a smart ring. And while it's diminutive and has a lot of high tech in it, my problem with the ring has been that my watch does everything the ring does, but it's more connected to all of my ecosystem. And if you have a phone, or any other smart devices, you're going to want to retain that ecosystem. And it was a somewhat expensive gadget. So let me see if they have the pricing here. And then the Whoop, which I haven't even looked into yet. Let's see if I can find it here, if they talk about it. No, not really. Well, anyway, the Oura Ring was something that would track you kind of like a Fitbit, but it was really limited, but pretty expensive, if I recall correctly. It was $300, yeah. So it was somewhere around $300 when I looked at it. But that was several years ago. And I just never got into it. I ended up going with the Apple Watch anyway. And this was going to be a side thing. The Whoop markets the 4.0 as free, but with a mandatory $30 a month subscription. And you can pay for one or 2 years up front and get a discount, but it still comes out to either $240 or $300 for each year of use, the membership. So I'll have to pull up the Whoop, but I brought this simply because I wanted to talk about the ring. Like most rings, it's, at least to me, most rings are thick on your finger, and they don't allow me to make a tight enough fist without like kind of crushing my other my other fingers. So I don't really wear rings. I don't, and depending on what I'm doing, I don't like having a ring that can conduct electricity. So yeah. Although one of my associates way back, it was a saturation master diver, and an object that was sitting next to a boat actually pinned his hand against the ship, and the thing that saved his hand was his ring. So you win, you lose some, but at any rate. So the Whoop was that little wristband thing. But it looks like it's a fitness tracker. But I wasn't even going into this article to talk about the Whoop. I was talking about the Oura. And now I love the idea of fitness trackers. I love the idea of getting statistics about your health. I do it with my watch. I'm thinking about getting a tonal. It really comes down to what is the benefit to you as a consumer. But I didn't think that the Oura Ring really facilitated much compared to smarter device like the Apple Watch. Let's continue on. The next article is about bees. And this actually got me kind of bent out of shape last night when I learned about it. And I just happened to find the article in ohmTown as well. And millions of bees that were transported on a Delta flight died in extreme heat after being left on the tarmac in Atlanta. This is in the Hatch Ideas channel, but it was aggregated from Business Insider. I'm just going to go over to Business Insider real quick. There we go. So it's a real bummer. This Business Insider article is written by Ryan Hogg, and basically what happened was these bees were redirected, left on the tarmac in Atlanta, Georgia, and one person learned about it, about the diversion, and then a bunch of people worked together to try and get these bees um, out of the airport so that they could at least be saved. Be saved. I didn't mean to say it like that, but um, so all of these bees died. So it says here on behalf of the shipment of 200 crates ordered by Sarah McElry of Sarah's Alaska Honey on behalf of 300 Alaskan beekeepers carried 800 pounds of bees and was worth an estimated $48,000. That completely belies the benefit of the long-term life of a bee. Just because it's a bee and it's going to die at some point in its relatively short life, the fact that it does so much in its lifetime that it's valued at only $48,000 just really got me bent out of shape, because what it does for the world, what a bee does for the world, is just underappreciated, particularly in Alaska. When you have to order 200 crates of bees so that they can pollinate and create honey, um, it isn't just $48,000. It's the long-term viability of that ecosystem. And we are now we are now at the point where we have to ship bees around to pollinate regions. And it's beyond bizarre that nobody in Atlanta said, hey, let's move these to a place where they'll be able to survive. If they would have taken them to a field and opened up all of the crates, the bees would have flown out and gotten air. They would have been able to control the temperature inside their crates. They would have been back because the queen is there. Even if you lose 10,000 of them, it doesn't matter. They'll repopulate, but at least they wouldn't die. Now all of them died. So that just got me. And this is part of the ignorance and apathy of the general population, because they don't know the importance of something. And I say this phrase often to people: you don't know what you don't know. So why didn't somebody ask the question, hey, these are bees, we have a bee problem in the world, they're all dying off because of pollutants, what should we do about these to save them? And that's not what happened. So maybe there was some discussion behind closed doors somewhere. But it says here, I really panicked when they found that they had moved them outside because the pheromones that the honeybees emit are attractive to other honeybees that are native to the area, she told APM. Because the bees were outside, it made it harder to rescue those in the crates. So if they were locked in, if the doors were closed in the crates, they wouldn't be able to get the heat out. And little bees, they generate a ton of heat. That's why when you look at hives, sometimes you'll see them sitting outside the little entrance, blowing air out of the hive. So they basically just kind of cooked inside their crates. So go over to Business Insider and you'll be able to read the rest of the article on it. And Dreadnought, sometimes I'm referring to the podcast, so I know that you can click these links and you can go and check it all out, but it's more about the podcast. Yeah, exactly. All it took was one conscientious thinker, oh my God, look at those bees. But they disregarded everything, right? And this tends to happen when people have tunnel vision about their place in the world. I've been told at times, you can sometimes come across as telling people what to do, or how to think, or something like that. but it's really about awareness. What I'm trying to do in a show like this is talk about the news that you wouldn't normally stumble across, because you and I and everybody are in information overload. So I'm finding things that are more tactical, and I think are interesting, that give context to our place as human beings in society. So all it took was one conscientious thinker, one person going, huh, 200 crates of bees, maybe we should put them in a place that's more suitable to them and not have them die on the tarmac. So, yeah. So this next article is going to either make you flinch or you're going to really love it. And that is in the Hatch Ideas channel, because it's associated with business. It's in my channel. And this is Tropicana has introduced a limited edition cereal. Tropicana creates limited edition cereal designed to be eaten with orange juice poured over it instead of milk. So this is the same organization that created toothpaste that is a mix of toothpaste and orange juice, because apparently some people dig this combination. But it says here that it is just a regular cereal, but it's designed apparently to have orange juice. Yeah. So this article is over at Business Insider. Zara Tayeb is the author. The picture that they're showing on Business Insider is just is a glass of orange juice. It's not the cereal. But where is it? It's the cereal is named Tropical Crunch, and it includes honey almond clusters that are made to be, quote unquote, drowned in OJ. And according to the company, it's the first cereal of its kind. I wonder why. Tropicana did not immediately respond to Insider's request for comment made outside of normal working hours. So it says orange juice on cereal. Some call it weird. Some call it breakfast. We didn't even know it was a thing, Tropicana said. It added, however, that according to recent survey, 15 million Americans eat cereal with orange juice poured over it instead of milk. Like an inflatable dartboard. What? Okay, so Dreadnought, you said toothpaste with citric acid is like an inflatable dartboard. I've never even... Okay, so I've never eaten a dartboard, let alone an inflatable. Okay, wow, that is some serious imagination that I have to provoke there. Yeah, but I've had toothpaste, and I've had orange juice, and I've had cereal in the same timeline. So if that's what an inflatable dartboard tastes like, it's just it. Oh gosh, but 15 million Americans. So how many around the world do this? We had I can't remember what channel I was in. Was it last night? I think I was in, I can't remember which channel it was, but was mentioning pineapple on pizza, and that it's an atrocity. Some people love it. Yeah. No, I get it. I'm more worried about the taste. It still functions. This functions. It's just not going to taste good. So you may not like it. I can tell everybody that I will never have this. Strike that. If somebody were to have it and offer it up to me, I would probably try it. But I can tell from past experience that that's just not. Hello, Hawkins. How are you? Nice to see you. I've never heard anyone ever doing this. Yeah, so who on earth has ever poured. I don't know of anybody. So now I'm going to have to go hunting and see if there's somebody out there that has done this. But over the years, I've heard people talking about OJ and toothpaste, and everybody's into that. Uh, I should say everybody has been susceptible to doing this, right? They brush their teeth and then they go drink OJ. But I don't know of anybody that likes it. But 15 million Americans, that is a survey. There's no way that 15 million people or however many Americans responded to this survey. They extrapolated it based off of some data point. They had a sample of 1,000 people, and of them, 15% said, yeah, I put OJ on my milk. And suddenly, let's see, Hawkins says, I've worked in casinos, hospitals, colleges, mom and pop pizza shops. I've worked a breakfast shift for a truck stop for about 3 years, and I've never, ever heard of this. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and citric acid, orange juice isn't really good for teeth. I mean, you would have to brush your teeth when you get up in the morning, go eat or drink orange juice, and then go brush your teeth again, because citric acid will just keep on gnawing away. Obviously, you can just like rinse it out with water or whatever, but who really does that? But 15 million people, yeah, I don't think that, whatever that survey was, it was extrapolated into the US population, and there's no way there's 15 million Americans that eat it. Okay, let me continue on with the news a little bit. I have like 4 more articles, and we'll get through this. How are you, Hawkins Jams? Thanks for coming by. If you haven't followed me, please follow me. See that counter right there? I've been doing this for, typically it's an hour a day, but I've been doing this for 120 episodes, and I'm still not at 100%. Tell a friend. Awesome, thanks. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for swinging by, too. So then you must know what this is all about, so I won't reintroduce you to it. But so this article is in the Hatch Ideas channel, and it's medieval ceramic vessel found in Jerusalem offers potential evidence of Crusader knights using hand grenades, study finds. I thought this was fascinating. I'm a really big fan of Time Team from the UK, where they basically go through all of the UK and dig up Russian, what am I talking about? Roman archaeology, because you can literally just kind of dig 3 inches down anywhere in the UK, and you're going to find Roman remains of something. Tessera are all over the place, apparently. I want to go there and just do a dig, because that was the very first passion of mine, was archaeology. And then I went to a couple of digs when I was really young, and I had gone to whatchamacallit? Oh goodness, what is it called? I'll come back to it. Anyway, I'm being distracted by so many thoughts in my head right now. Pompeii. I went to Pompeii when I was young, and it was just really fascinating about the ruins that were there, and what happened, and that there are casts of people that were there that died in Pompeii. Anyway, and so I went to other digs when I was younger and going through school, and I was really interested in this stuff. And then somebody said, you're gonna dig up bodies periodically, and I'm like, okay, I'm out. But I was younger, and I couldn't disconnect myself from it. And so at any rate, I'm really fascinated in the history of all of this. So archaeologists analyzed the residue inside 4 ceramic vessels found in the old city of Jerusalem. One vessel was potentially a medieval grenade. Consistent with first-hand accounts from the period, it contains the remnants of an explosive mix of plant oils, animal fats, nitrates, and sulfur. So I saw a picture of this and thought that it was just so cool. So, you know, from Monty Python, the holy hand grenade, that's this. That's that right there. Or that right there. It's the holy hand grenade. And you have to count properly before you throw it. But it looks thick, you know. I don't know what it would accomplish, because it looks like it's made of clay. So I don't know if the explosive force would be sufficient, but maybe it could set fire to something, and you could throw it because it's, you know, self-contained in sort of like a Molotov cocktail. But not everything is there, right? So we don't really know what the rest of this thing looked like. But I think that it's just fascinating. I love the idea of it. Let's see. New analysis of a medieval ceramic vessel excavated from the old city of Jerusalem suggests the Crusader Knights could have developed a rudimentary hand grenades in their wars against the Muslim rulers of the Holy Land. Archaeologists from Griffith University. Sorry, we have a thing called Griffith Observatory. Anyway, archaeologists from Griffith University in southeast Queensland, Australia, examined the residue inside 4 spheroconical containers, and they showed their own little mixture. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it was Greek fire, you know? Huh. Their own version of napalm, that kind of thing, right? Pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. They don't have any other pictures from what I understand, but more will come, I'm sure. If I do another search somewhere else, I'll probably find it. Oh, really? So, wait. But it, so Hawkins, you're saying that this was in books, but as recollection from people that are talking about it, right? Not an actual embodiment. Is this not the first? Oh, recorded accounts of these being used, but the physical evidence is new. Yeah, okay, cool. Because I had never seen anything like this. Obviously, I'm not a subject matter expert in archaeology, but this thing seems like it's really revolutionary. Yeah, exactly. A big find. You're right. Yeah, and Greek fire is well documented. That I know. Let's see. So I don't think I said the author and the source. So that article about the medieval ceramic vessel was from Business Insider, and it's written by Joshua Zitzer. Yeah, if they can find the recipe, that would be really spectacular. If they can reverse engineer it from the internals of this. I always find it interesting when they can scrape the bottom of a barrel that they've found that's been buried for 5,000 years, and they suddenly come out with tea. It was a barrel full of tea. And it's all because somebody dug into it to find, you know, little remnants of fibers and stuff. Yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, so let's go on to the next article. I don't know why people bother me when I'm doing my stream, but they don't bother me when I'm not doing my stream. Could be that I've been doing this for 2 hours now, but okay, so the next article is over in the Word in Tech, and Theranos merchandise on eBay sparks bloodlust among Elizabeth Holmes fans. Hawkins jams. You said these sort of disposable weapons are still being somewhat intact is really cool. I agree, and it's all because it gets buried. In like in the UK, when it's buried, it's so it seems like everything that I've seen and read about Roman ruins, particularly in the UK, it's so evenly covered, that every once in a while you're digging somewhere and up pops, something like this. My understanding of the region of archaeology in Jerusalem is that it's so built upon that a lot of it is subsurface, like it's down in tunnels and stuff now. So finding it even there is even more astonishing because you have to do so much to get to that historical record. So I'm sure that they're going to find more of these somewhere. It just takes time. And finding one fully intact it has to be down there. I just hope that it becomes public information, because a lot of things are discovered and then stuck inside a warehouse somewhere, and eventually somebody gets to it. Like certain pieces of wood that were discovered inside the archaeological remains from pyramids in Egypt. So they suddenly find, after somebody starts digging into the historic record inside the warehouses that are associated with the museum, right, that houses all of the parts, um, they find something that you can carbon date, and it throws back the timeline 10,000 years because the carbon dating on the wood suggests that they were built at a different time period, and it kind of, everybody has to rework the history because of new evidence. And that's always amazing when that happens, when something really changes the dynamic. This one is fascinating to me because I think, to me, Theranos is a done deal. It's over, it's done, it's burnt. Just move on. But as with all things in society, you never quite know who's going to do what. And I think I'm a firm believer that there is always an audience for something, no matter what it is. You would never suspect that watching marbles run around on a plastic track or down a beach path would turn into a very lucrative lifestyle. But if you go and look at, I think it's pronounced Yell's marble runs. It's spelled Jelle, I believe. But anyway, if you go over to YouTube, man, hundreds of thousands of views for every episode. Probably millions of views. I haven't looked at it for its. I've watched the videos, but I haven't looked at the stats for a while. But it's just fascinating, right? So Theranos is burnt. It doesn't exist, but fans of Elizabeth Holmes are still trying to cling on to it as if it's meaningful in some way. Maybe they're historians of like a Eft Company. If you've ever seen that website, Eft Company, I can't say it because I've got a clean podcast. But anyway, go check out Eft Company, and you'll see where I'm coming from. People are just fascinated with a train wreck. So this here is fans and followers of Theranos and its founder Elizabeth Holmes can now take home an expensive piece of original piece of the company. So on eBay, more than a dozen allegedly authentic products from the now defunct Silicon Valley firm are being sold. Let's click the link to take us over to The Guardian, who is the source of this article, and Carrie Paul. And yeah, so she's going through her, I think she's done with her trial. Her, I guess, arguably co-conspirator is going through his. And here on eBay, a set of 5 Theranos branded pens recently sold for $150. A water bottle is currently listed at $1,500. I bet you if they had said that Amaranth had poured bathwater into it and somebody drank from it, like, Elizabeth Holmes drank from it, that thing would probably be $1 million. But as it stands, it's a lowly $1,500. And for $11,000, you can purchase an quote unquote authentic Theranos lab coat, notably never worn. uh, Well, considering I can produce Theranos lab coats pretty easily, I wouldn't pay $11,000 for it. Holmes was convicted in January on 4 of 11 charges of fraud following a weeks-long trial chronicling her role in the blood testing firm. It was so aspirational. I wanted it to succeed, but things just fell apart in rapid succession, and they manipulated results. Although I think, as far as I recall, the results that they gave to actual patients were from real assay devices, not from a Theranos device. So people weren't harmed. Um, but the financial aspect of Theranos was wholly unsound. And what they were doing never really manifested anything tangible. They basically just lied, trying to fake it until they made it, but they never made it. And then they pissed off enough rich people that they were um, pursued, I guess you could say, to make everybody whole. And it's what I say with people all the time. People are never bent out of shape when everything is going good, even if it is illegal activity, even if it is fraudulent or unethical or whatever. If if the people that are benefiting from it are benefiting from it to their desire, then nobody ever says anything, until there's like a whistleblower or something that pops up out of the woodwork. But then when the fit hits the shan, people come out of the woodwork and say, I knew about this being bad and blah, blah, blah. I want my money back. And they try and mitigate the loss. Um, but it's really about money. Most of these people didn't care about the ethics of it. As long as they were getting a 6-figure check plus, they were cool with just going with the flow. Let's continue on the next two articles, and then I'm done. This article is in Smack Talk. Apple clarifies condition for App Store app removal and extends the update deadline to 90 days. Yesterday, and I think maybe the day before, I spoke about Apple is now pulling apps that haven't been updated in a quote-unquote significant amount of time. That was the verbiage then. However, developers would be able to circumvent the removal by submitting an update for review within 30 days. Now I think it's 90 days. So if you've got an app in the App Store, you better do something with it. Otherwise, it's going to be summarily dismissed. And by that, I mean deleted. They won't store it somewhere for you to download. It's going to be gone. So yeah, I've got at least 2 apps that are in the App Store that I need to update so that they don't get pulled, because once an app hits a certain point of stasis, you don't necessarily need to update it. But to make it current, to keep it time sensitive within Apple's eyes, you have to update. And there you have it. So let's go over to Apple Insider. That's where the article was sourced from, and Amber Neely is the author of it. And they'll be talking about it. And they've got videos and whatnot. It says, first, Apple clarifies that a significant amount of time means within the last 3 years. So yeah, my apps would fall outside it. But they've done this before in terms of the operating system, the programming language that was used. If you didn't have, I think it was 64-bit code, then your app was going to get pulled. It depended on the SDK and everything that you were using. So if you haven't done any updates within the last 3 years, you better do an update, or otherwise it's going to get pulled. And it says this also seemingly only applies to apps that fail to meet a minimum download threshold in a rolling 12-month period, though the company does not clarify what that minimum is. Again, if you're not active in the App Store as a developer, then you will be invited not to return, so to speak, with that particular app. So go and update. And lastly, the last bit of news is in Ban to Bezel, which is all about watches and the tech associated with it. Introducing the soul of British watchmaking with the Fears and Garrick watch. I'm just going to hurry and get you over to Monochrome. So monochrome-watches.com is the website. The article is written by Robin Newey. And I'm really into watches, even though I don't have a collection of them. I just love the tech that's involved. Every time I bring them up in my stream, I always qualify it like that because I don't want anybody thinking that I've got this massive collection of watches. I just love the engineering. And you can mass produce a watch, but the artistry within it is just kind of somewhat of a time capsule of the style of the times. And sometimes these watches just break out of the dynamic that a normal watch looks like. So every piece is an art piece, even if it's mass produced. They all have the same basic mechanics, but the style at which they're all put together is just beautiful. And so what you look at the face and the bezel of it is nothing compared to the inner workings. And there are some watches that are just amazingly sophisticated, yet they still have at their most fundamental level the same engine, the same pieces, same elements that turn the dials. And so Dreadnought says in chat, watches are amazing. I agree. So this website focuses on that, but they also have other tertiary articles. So definitely go over to monochrome-watches.com and check it all out. I'm just going to scroll back down because I just want to get to certain pictures. And we can actually look at some of the inner workings of it. So right there is the winding. That's the first time that I've ever seen a winding on display. Normally it's encapsulated, typically right behind the spindle that's in the center of a watch. But in this case, it's wide open. And let's see, I want to see the back of it. Ta-da! There you go. So if you're in the podcast, obviously you're not going to be able to see this, but I encourage you to go over to monochrome-watches.com and do a search for the soul of British watchmaking with the Fears and Garrick watch. And you'll get to see the various parts of the watch and its design. Yeah, and this little gadget down here on the blue table in the picture, that holds the workings of the watch so that you can tear it all apart. It's really neat. And there are YouTube channels that I encourage people to go and look at too, where they restore watches. Let me see. So it has limited availability and it's 16,250 British pounds. So not a cheap watch by any means, but it says that it's limited to a production of just 10 to 15 pieces per year and is exclusively available through Fears watches. And it says this is mostly down to production capacity as these watches take time. Ha ha ha. And patience to finish to perfection. So there you go. This looks like a very kind of respectable timepiece. The only thing that is really out of band for my aesthetic is actually seeing that the winding. You actually get to see it itself. I'd rather see the train of gears and everything skeletonized so I can see every piece of that mechanic, not just that. But it is a good indicator of when you need to take your watch in to get serviced, because if that starts looking funky because the oil is getting old, go get it serviced. Otherwise, it won't be telling time properly. Okay, anyway, that is it for today. Really appreciate you coming by and hanging out with me. Let's see, who can I throw you over to?